Welcome to Leaders' Questions, where Ireland's leaders face the heat, the pressure, and the toughest questions of the day.
Margaret. Taoiseach, I've watched your answers here in this tall chamber over the last 5 years, and I have to say the answer you gave on the housing, 40,000, is one of the weakest I've ever seen you deliver in this House. You say that you had a genuine belief that 40,000 homes would be delivered based on estimates from private entities. Now, why, Taoiseach, did you completely and utterly disregard the hard data coming from the official state bodies, like the CSO, that were completely disputing your 40,000 homes claim? Why, as Taoiseach, did you not accept that data from the CSO? Is it only when it comes to housing completions in an election year that you don't listen to CSO data? Is that the case? Is it on everything else that you accept CSO data, but not when it comes to housing completions in an election year? Can you explain that as Taoiseach as to why you don't accept official data sources from the Central Bank, ESRI and CSO, all of which were saying that the 40,000 homes that you and your colleague, the then Minister for Housing, Darragh O'Brien, and the Taoiseach, Simon Harris, were saying 40,000 homes? All of them were disputing you and you weren't listening. Why is that, Taoiseach? In the run-up to the election, Taoiseach, the government spin on this was relentless. You were saying time and again that your housing plan was working and that 40,000 homes would be delivered. You did this despite a mountain of evidence to the contrary. You ignored all of the reports from the CSO, Central Bank and ESRI that said housing delivery would be nowhere near 40,000 homes. In a video that you posted during the election, you said, when this government came into office, we had 20,000 houses being built a year. We're now coming close to 40,000. Darragh O'Brien and Simon Harris likewise made similar statements. In fact, Darragh O'Brien even claimed at times that there was going to be in excess of 40,000 homes delivered. In fact, we got 10,000 fewer homes, less than your 40,000 promise that you were making, a 7% decrease on the year before. And let's be clear about this. These claims were made as recently as last November, just over 10 weeks ago. Now, for those to have stood up, there would have had to have been 10,000 additional homes near completion at that point. There was not. Those homes do not exist. This isn't just an academic issue about numbers, Taoiseach. This is about people whose hopes and dreams of affording their own home are being shattered by this lack of delivery. So, Taoiseach, was your claim that 40,000 homes would be delivered last year a deliberate deception? And do you regret misleading the public on this?
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
So, as I said already, Deputy, housing is the #1 issue. It wasn't in any shape or form a deliberate attempt to mislead people. And I have quoted those who early in the year, mid-year, were predicting close to 40,000. EY, Euroconstruct, Deutsche Bank, Cairn Homes. Others, by the way, in other years that you've identified, were underestimated the number of houses that was subsequently built. And that is something that you haven't spoken of. And we exceeded our targets in 2022, and we exceeded our targets in 2023, and you dismissed that at the time. And you engaged in a sort of significant, in my view, political sort of commentary, as opposed to at least acknowledging the fact that we did increase targets in 22, or exceeded targets, sorry, in 22 and 23. And I also have to put it to you, Deputy, that right throughout the last 4 years, I mean, your party's policy position was to oppose significant legislation and initiatives that led to increased housing, particularly on the affordable side. I mean, you opposed the LDA Act, you opposed the Affordable Housing Act, and you opposed the Planning Act. And you have shown no sense of urgency around the housing crisis. And if I may say so, I believe you've been too ideologically wedged to certain fundamentals in terms of the housing issue and the housing market. And I think one of the challenges we have is, and it will remain a challenge irrespective of what gets said, is how we balance the unprecedented level of state investment in housing with private sector investment in housing. Because if we want to get to the 50,000 per year, we're going to have to do that. And that will need fairly focused, specific change in what we've been doing. I acknowledge that. I've said we're very disappointed that we didn't reach our targets. And I regret that very strongly. But it just redoubles my effort to have an honest look at all of the initiatives that has happened now, that have happened in the last number of years. And where do we have to do more? And I would respectfully suggest it's not in opposing every initiative that government comes forward with. It's not taking safe options like saying it all has to be social housing on one side or nothing, which delayed housing schemes, you did, which delayed housing schemes for years in this country. Absolute fundamentalism in respect of how things should happen has held back housing growth in this country. And that, I'm going to put it to you, that we're going to take initiatives here, and I would welcome your support for them, instead of what has happened over the last 4 years, where you've opposed every single progressive measure designed to get increased output in housing.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy O'Callaghan.
10 out of 10 Taoiseach for deflection and evasion.
Please, deputies.
But Taoiseach, where is the 40,000 homes that you promised? And why, as Taoiseach, when it comes to housing completions data, do you accept reports from private entities and reject the data that was coming out of the CSO? Why? You haven't answered that. You failed to answer that. Is that only when it comes to housing completions in an election year that you don't listen to CSO data? Or is it just when it's just doing what it suits yourself on this? I have to say, Taoiseach, for years no one could trust Fianna Fáil after Ministers Noel Dempsey and Dermot Hearn couldn't keep a straight face when they were denying that there was going to be a bailout of the banks after the economic crash. Now, you worked hard to try and rebuild trust in Fianna Fáil, and you're throwing that away with going into election years and making claims about 40,000 homes that you couldn't stack up, that the Central Bank, ESRI and CSO weren't backing up. So I'll ask my question again, Taoiseach. Do you regret misleading the public on this?
Thank you, Deputy O'Callaghan.
Well, as I said to you, and I say it again, there was no attempt to mislead the public on this. That's the first point. But I make another point here. We used ESRI data for our election predictions, or not predictions, targets on housing, which you did as well, by the way, and everybody did. But the fundamental question is, how do you achieve them? That's the core question. What you put forward on your election manifesto and programme, again, didn't persuade people that you had a silver bullet on housing, because you didn't. And I met you and I met with the Labour Party in terms of formation of government, and you were extremely poor in terms of what you brought forward. No fleshing out. Look, Deputy, one of your main contributions at that meeting was, and I remember it well, you looking at the clock, at the watch, nudge, nudge, time to get out, to make the 6 o'clock news for the soundbite. That was your contribution to government talks. That's what happened.
Please.
And that did happen.
No clapping.
That happened. We saw it on our side. Nudge, nudge, look at the watch, we better get out and get the 6 o'clock news.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Thank you,
You had no commitment to going into government.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Your time is up. Now, we
Like, share, and subscribe to stay informed and help drive positive change.